Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the long hallways of the Galactic Council building. Her shoes made soft sounds on the smooth floor. She had been doing this walk for 3 years now. Every day she came here to speak for humanity. Every day she tried to make things better for her people. The council building was huge. It floated in space above the planet Nexus Prime. Through the big windows, Sarah could see ships from dozens of different alien races. The Zeltharian warships were the biggest. They looked like metal spears with weapons covering every surface. The council always said those ships were for protection. Sarah knew better. Today was different. Today, Sarah carried news that made her stomach feel sick. The message pad in her hand felt heavy. She had read it 100 times on the trip here. Each time it made her more angry. The council chamber was a big round room. Seats went up in circles like an old Earth stadium. Representatives from 47 different species sat in those seats. They all looked down at the center where Sarah would speak. The room smelled like a mix of different alien scents. Some sweet, some bitter, some that hurt her nose. Sarah took her place at the speaker's platform. She looked up at all the faces staring down at her. Some looked like animals from Earth. Others looked like nothing she could name, but she could read their expressions. Most looked bored. Some looked annoyed. A few looked angry that she was even there. Chancellor Vexthal spoke first. He was the leader of the council. His species looked like tall gray birds with 4 arms. His voice sounded like wind through metal pipes. "The human representative may speak," he said. "We hope this will be brief. The council has important matters to discuss today." Sarah activated her message pad. The holographic display showed a map of human space. Red dots marked their colonies. One red dot blinked with an alarm signal. "Honorable Chancellor, respected members of the council," Sarah began. "I come before you today with an emergency request. The human colony world of New Eden is under blockade by Zeltharian forces." A sound like angry buzzing filled the chamber. The Zeltharian representative stood up. His name was War Leader Krexgoth. He was 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. His 4 eyes glowed red when he was angry. They were glowing now. "The humans speak lies," Krexgoth said. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "New Eden is under medical quarantine. A dangerous plague spreads on that world. We protect the galaxy from infection." Sarah felt her hands shake with anger. She forced herself to stay calm. "That is not true, War Leader. The plague you speak of was brought to New Eden by Zeltharian traders. Our medical teams identified it as red fever. It is not dangerous to other species. It only affects humans. And it can be easily cured with basic medical supplies. Supplies that we cannot allow through the quarantine," Krexgoth replied. "The risk is too great." Sarah touched her message pad again. New images appeared. Pictures of human children lying sick in hospital beds. Pictures of families waiting in long lines for food. Pictures of empty medicine shelves. 300,000 humans live on New Eden, Sarah said. 60,000 of them are children. They have been without proper medical supplies for 2 weeks. The Zeltharian blockade stops all ships from reaching the planet, even medical ships with Red Cross markings. She paused and looked around the chamber. "We have the cure for red fever. It is a simple injection that costs almost nothing to make. But the Zeltharian blockade prevents us from delivering it. Children are dying while we debate." Chancellor Vexthal made a sound like a mechanical sigh. "The Zeltharian Empire has the right to enforce quarantine procedures. This is established council law." "With respect, Chancellor," Sarah said, "council law also says that medical emergencies override quarantine procedures. Section 847 of the Galactic Health Code clearly states, 'Enough.'" Krexgoth's voice boomed through the chamber. "Humans always hide behind their papers and laws. You are a weak species. You produce nothing of value. You contribute nothing to galactic security. Your words mean nothing." The chamber filled with various sounds of agreement. Sarah heard clicking, buzzing, and humming from different species. Her chest felt tight. This was not the first time aliens had called humans weak, but it never stopped hurting. Sarah had been ambassador for 3 years. Before that, she had been a diplomat for 7 years. Before that, she had served in the Earth Defense Force for 10 years. She had spent 20 years of her life trying to make peace with these aliens, 20 years of being polite while they treated humans like children. "War Leader Krexgoth," Sarah said, keeping her voice steady, "what do you want in exchange for lifting the blockade?" Krexgoth's 4 eyes brightened. His mouth opened to show rows of sharp teeth. The humans will give up their mining rights in the Kepler sector. They will also give up their trade route through the Vegan Gateway. In exchange, we will consider allowing medical supplies to reach New Eden. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. The Kepler sector mines provided rare metals that humans needed for their technology. The Vegan Gateway was the fastest trade route between human space and the galactic core. Giving up both would cripple human civilization for decades. That is not a fair exchange, Sarah said. You are asking us to give up our economic future to save our people from a plague that your traders brought to our world. Life is not fair, Krexgoth replied. The strong take what they need. The weak give what they must. More sounds of agreement filled the chamber. Sarah looked around at all the alien faces. She had spent years learning their customs, speaking their languages, respecting their cultures. She had believed that patience and diplomacy could solve any problem. She had been wrong. Chancellor Vexthul spoke again. The council will consider this matter. We will form a committee to study the situation. A report will be ready in 6 standard months. 6 months? Sarah's voice cracked. People are dying now. Children are dying now. You want to study the situation for 6 months while 300,000 humans suffer? The council must be careful, Vexthul said. We cannot make decisions in haste. The Zeltharian Empire has served as the galaxy's protector for 1,000 years. We trust their judgment in security matters. Sarah stood in silence for a long moment. Around her, the aliens began talking among themselves. They spoke in their various languages, but she caught enough words to understand. They were already moving on to other business. The fate of New Eden was not important to them. She thought about the children in those hospital beds. She thought about the families waiting for medicine that would never come. She thought about 20 years of trying to make peace with beings who saw humans as nothing more than useful servants. Sarah closed her message pad and put it away. She looked up at Chancellor Vexthul one last time. I have served as ambassador to this council for 3 years, she said. In that time, I have always believed that reasonable beings could find reasonable solutions to any problem. I was wrong. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. Today, I resign as ambassador to the Galactic Council, Sarah said without turning around. And I leave you with this message to carry back to your governments. She stopped at the door and looked back one final time. We tried to do this the civilized way. The chamber, doors closed behind her with a soft sound. Sarah Chen walked back through the long hallways, but this time her steps were different. This time she was not walking to another day of patient diplomacy. This time she was walking toward war. The message reached Earth 12 hours after Sarah Chen walked out of the council chamber. It was a simple transmission. Just 4 words coded in an old Earth military cipher. Diplomacy has been exhausted. Admiral Marcus Holt received the message in his office deep beneath the Swiss Alps. The room looked like any other military command center. Screens showed star maps, ship positions, and tactical data. But the data on these screens would have shocked every alien in the galaxy. Holt was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his years as a ship engineer. He had been planning for this day for 23 years. Ever since the first human ships had been turned away from alien space stations. Ever since the first trade agreements that gave humans almost nothing in exchange for everything. He activated his secure communication system. Within minutes, faces appeared on screens around his desk. These were the commanders of humanity's real military, not the small defense force that the aliens knew about. The real fleet that had been hidden for decades. Ladies and gentlemen, Holt said, we have just received the broken arrow signal from Ambassador Chen. Operation Long Sleep is now active. Captain Sarah Okafor appeared on one screen. She commanded the merchant vessel Star of Lagos. At least that's what the aliens thought. In reality, she commanded the dreadnought Righteous Fury, one of the most powerful warships ever built. About damn time, Okafor said. My crew has been pretending to haul grain for 6 years. They're ready for some real action. How long until you can reach your first target? Holt asked. 18 hours to the Zeltharian naval base at Proxima 7, Okafor replied. My ship and 12 others are already in position. Other faces on other screens reported similar readiness. Across the galaxy, hundreds of human merchant ships were moving toward their assigned targets. Each ship had spent years traveling normal trade routes, mapping alien defenses, learning alien habits. Now they were ready to strike. The plan had begun 47 years ago when humans first joined the Galactic Council. The alien species had welcomed humanity, but only as junior partners. Human ships could only use certain trade routes. Human colonies could only be built in certain areas. Human technology could only be shared under strict licensing agreements. The aliens thought they were being generous. They thought humans should be grateful for any place in galactic civilization. They had no idea that humans had been studying them from the very beginning. Every human diplomat was also an intelligence officer. Every human trader was also a scout. Every human scientist was also a weapons researcher. For 47 years, humanity had been learning everything about their alien neighbors, their technologies, their weaknesses, their military capabilities. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They had judged humanity by their own standards. Most alien species were specialists. The Zeltharians were warriors. The Vegan Commerce Guild were traders. The Altair Republic were engineers. Each species was good at one thing. Humans were good at everything. While the aliens focused on their specialties, humans had been developing in secret. They had taken alien technology and improved it. They had found weaknesses in alien defenses and built weapons to exploit them. They had created an entire shadow military that existed parallel to their civilian space fleet. The merchant ships that carried grain and manufactured goods were actually warships with hidden weapon systems. The civilian crew members were actually trained military officers. The trade routes that humans had negotiated were actually strategic positions that gave them access to every major alien system. Admiral Holt looked at the tactical display on his main screen. It showed the position of every human ship in the galaxy. To alien observers, it looked like normal commercial traffic. In reality, it was the largest military fleet ever assembled. Commence Phase 1, Holt ordered. All ships begin transition to combat status. Across the galaxy, human ships began to change. Cargo bays opened to reveal fighter squadrons. Hull plates slid back to expose weapon batteries. Sensor arrays extended to begin scanning for enemy targets. In the space of a few hours, hundreds of harmless merchant vessels became a terrifying war fleet. The aliens noticed something was happening, but they didn't understand what they were seeing. Zeltharian monitoring stations reported unusual activity among human ships. The ships were changing course, grouping together, broadcasting on military frequencies. But the aliens had no context for what they were observing. War leader Krex Goth received reports at his command post above New Eden. His officers were confused by the data they were collecting. The human merchants are acting strangely, one officer reported. They are moving in formation patterns. They are using encrypted communications. Krex Goth made a sound of annoyance. Humans are always doing strange things. They panic easily. Probably they heard rumors about the blockade and are running away. His officers accepted this explanation. It made sense to them. Humans were weak, cowardly creatures who ran from any sign of trouble. The idea that they might be preparing for war was impossible to consider. On Earth, Admiral Holt watched as his ships moved into position. The plan was simple in concept but incredibly complex in execution. Human forces would strike simultaneously at 17 key Zeltharian bases. They would capture or destroy the alien fleet before it could respond. They would do this so quickly and completely that resistance would be impossible. The operation had been planned down to the minute. Each ship knew exactly where to go and what to do. Each crew had trained for this moment for years. Each weapon had been tested and retested in secret facilities throughout human space. But the most important part of the plan was not military. It was psychological. For 47 years, the aliens had seen humans as weak and harmless. They had never considered humanity a threat. This belief was so strong that even obvious signs of military activity could be explained away. The aliens simply could not imagine that the peaceful diplomatic humans were preparing for war. This blindness would be their downfall. Holt opened a communication channel to all human commanders. Thousands of faces appeared on screens throughout the command center. Ship captains, ground force leaders, intelligence officers, and logistics coordinators, the people who had spent decades preparing for this moment. Today we end 47 years of humiliation, Holt said. Today we show the galaxy that humans are not weak. We are not helpless. We are not your servants or your junior partners. He paused and looked at each face on the screens. Today we remind the universe that peace is a choice, and when that choice is taken away from us, we are very, very good at war. The countdown began. 72 hours until the first shots would be fired. 72 hours for final preparations. 72 hours for humanity to transform from peaceful merchants into the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. In their bases and ships throughout alien space, the enemies of humanity continued their normal routines. They had no idea that their time was almost over. The storm was coming and they had no shelter. The war began at exactly 0400 Galactic Standard Time. It began with silence. War leader Krexgoth was sleeping in his command ship above New Eden when the first reports came in. His communication officer shook him awake with forearms trembling in fear. "War leader," the officer said, "we have lost contact with the home fleet." Krexgoth sat up quickly, his four eyes focused on the officer's frightened face. "What do you mean, lost contact?" They were conducting patrol exercises in the Zeltharian Prime system. At 0400, all communication stopped. No response to any frequency. No emergency beacons, nothing. Krexgoth moved to the command center of his ship. The main screen showed the tactical display for the New Eden blockade. 12 Zeltharian warships in perfect formation around the human planet. Everything looked normal. "Show me the home fleet position," he ordered. The display changed to show the Zeltharian home system. It should have shown the positions of 83 warships, the pride of the Zeltharian military. Instead, the screen was empty. No ships, no signals, no trace that the fleet had ever existed. "This cannot be correct," Krexgoth said. "Check the communication arrays. There must be equipment failure." But even as he spoke, more reports came in. The fortress base at Rigel Station was not responding. The patrol fleet at Wolf 359 had gone silent. The garrison at Tau Ceti was broadcasting emergency signals, then suddenly stopped. Across Zeltharian space, military installations were simply disappearing. Krexgoth had been a warrior for 60 years. He had fought in dozens of battles. He understood tactics and strategy better than most beings in the galaxy. But this was something new, something impossible. "How do you destroy 83 warships without any sign of battle?" he asked his officers. None of them had an answer. The truth was more shocking than Krexgoth could imagine. The Zeltharian home fleet had not been destroyed in battle. It had been erased by technology they didn't know existed. Captain Sarah Okafor watched from the bridge of her ship as the last Zeltharian vessel vanished from her sensors. Her weapons officer looked up from his console with a satisfied expression. "Target eliminated, Captain," he reported. "No survivors detected." Okafor nodded. The new human weapons were more effective than even she had hoped. The quantum pulse cannons could tear apart matter at the molecular level. The phase torpedoes could pass through shields and armor like they didn't exist. The ships they destroyed left no wreckage, no debris, nothing to indicate they had ever been there. "Excellent work," she said. "Signal the fleet." Primary objectives completed. Moving to secondary targets. Around her, 12 other human ships decloaked from their stealth fields. To Zeltharian sensors, they had been invisible. Advanced human technology made their ships undetectable until they chose to reveal themselves. The same scene was playing out across the galaxy. Human strike forces were hitting Zeltharian bases with weapons and tactics that seemed like magic. The aliens had no defense against technology they had never imagined. At the Rigel Station Fortress, Commander Beth Torres led a boarding party through corridors filled with confused Zeltharian soldiers. The fortress guns had been disabled by electromagnetic pulse weapons. The shields had been bypassed by phase technology. The defenders found themselves fighting an enemy that could appear and disappear at will. "Surrender now and you will be treated according to galactic law," Torres announced over the station's communication system. "Continue fighting and you will be destroyed." Most of the Zeltharian garrison chose to surrender. They had never seen weapons like the humans carried. Plasma rifles that could burn through their armor, sonic grenades that could stun an entire room, personal shields that made human soldiers nearly invulnerable. The few who tried to fight were quickly overwhelmed. Human soldiers moved like ghosts through the station, taking control of critical systems, securing important prisoners, gathering intelligence data. Within 6 hours, Rigel Station was completely under human control. The pattern repeated throughout Zeltharian space. Bases that had stood for centuries fell in minutes. Fleets that had patrolled the galaxy for decades simply vanished. The Zeltharian military, which had been the most powerful force in known space, was being systematically destroyed. But the humans were careful to minimize civilian casualties. Evacuation ships were allowed to leave combat zones. Medical stations were protected. Refugee camps were established for displaced aliens. The message was clear. This was war against the Zeltharian government and military, not genocide against the Zeltharian people. Back at New Eden, war leader Krexgoth finally understood what was happening. The reports from across his empire painted a picture he had never thought possible. Humanity was not the weak, helpless species he had believed them to be. They were predators who had been hiding their strength for decades. His communication officer brought another report. War leader, we're receiving a transmission from an unknown human vessel. Put it on the main screen, Krexgoth ordered. The display showed the bridge of a human ship. The captain was a woman with short gray hair and cold blue eyes. Behind her, Krexgoth could see weapon stations and tactical displays that looked far more advanced than anything in his own ship. I am Captain Lisa Park of the Earth Defense Force vessel, Terrible Swift Sword, the woman said. You have 30 seconds to lower your shields and surrender your ships. Krexgoth's four eyes blazed with anger. I am war leader Krexgoth of the Zeltharian Empire. I do not surrender to inferior species. Captain Park's expression didn't change. 20 seconds. My ships are more powerful than anything humans have ever built, Krexgoth continued. Your threats mean nothing. 10 seconds, Krexgoth cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. All ships prepare to fire. Show these humans what real military power looks like. The Zeltharian blockade fleet turned toward the approaching human ships. 12 Zeltharian war vessels against what appeared to be 5 human ships. The aliens should have had an overwhelming advantage. They were wrong. The human ships didn't even slow down. They came straight at the Zeltharian formation, weapons charging, shields up. But just before the two fleets met, something impossible happened. The human ships vanished. One moment they were there, the next moment they were gone. Krexgoth's sensor showed empty space where 5 human vessels had been just seconds before. Where did they go? He demanded. His answer came in the form of weapon fire from directly above his fleet. The human ships had somehow moved to a position that should have been impossible. They were firing down at the Zeltharian vessels from an angle that no ship could achieve. The first Zeltharian ship died in a blast of blue fire. The second ship tried to turn toward the attackers but was hit by weapons that passed right through its shields. The third ship launched missiles that simply vanished as if they had never existed. In less than 2 minutes, 11 of the 12 Zeltharian ships were destroyed. Only Krexgoth's command vessel remained, and it was badly damaged. Captain Park's face appeared on his screen again. This is your final warning, war leader. Surrender now or be destroyed. Krexgoth looked around his bridge. Half his crew was dead or wounded. His ship's weapons were offline. His shields were failing. Around him, the wreckage of his fleet drifted in space. For the first time in his 60 years of life, war leader Krexgoth felt fear. I surrender, he said. The blockade of New Eden was over. Medical ships began landing on the planet within the hour, carrying the supplies that would save thousands of human lives. The children in the hospitals would live. The families would be reunited. But this was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, other alien governments were receiving reports of the destruction of the Zeltharian military. They were learning that humanity was not the weak species they had believed. They were discovering that 47 years of patience had hidden 47 years of preparation, and they were very, very afraid. Chancellor Vexthul stood in the emergency session of the Galactic Council, his forearms shaking with fear. Around him, representatives from dozens of species were talking in panicked voices. The great chamber that had always been a place of calm debate now sounded like a marketplace during a fire. The reports kept coming in. The Zeltharian Empire, the military backbone of the galaxy for 1,000 years, had been destroyed in less than 18 hours. Not defeated, not damaged, completely destroyed. How is this possible? Demanded Representative Kekstar of the Vegan Commerce Guild. His blue skin had turned pale purple with stress. The humans have no military. They are merchants and farmers. They have a few patrol boats at most. Admiral Kethra of the Altair Republic stood at her seat. Her species looked like tall silver insects with multifaceted eyes. Those eyes were now wide with shock. I have reviewed the tactical reports, she said in her buzzing voice. What destroyed the Zeltharian fleets was not luck or surprise. It was superior technology. Weapons and ships far beyond anything we have ever seen. That is impossible, Chancellor Vexthul insisted. We have studied human technology for decades. They build simple machines, basic computers, primitive weapons, nothing that could threaten a modern military. Then explain this. Admiral Kethra activated a holographic display. It showed the remains of the Zeltharian home fleet. Or rather, it showed where the home fleet used to be. There was nothing left but empty space. 83 capital ships, destroyed without leaving any debris. No wreckage. No escape pods. No survivors. Whatever weapons the humans used, they removed matter from existence. The chamber fell silent. Every being there understood what this meant. If humans could make entire fleets disappear, no alien military in the galaxy could stand against them. Representative ZX Thol of the Hegemony World spoke next. His voice was a harsh whisper that came through mechanical translators. We must contact the humans immediately. We must negotiate. We must find a way to make peace. Peace? Chancellor Vexthul's voice rose to a screech. They have just committed genocide against an entire species. They have destroyed the Zeltharian Empire without warning or declaration of war. These are the actions of monsters, not civilized beings. The actions of beings we have driven to desperation. Admiral Kethra corrected. We blockaded their colony. We allowed their children to die from preventable disease. We laughed at their ambassador when she begged for help. She paused and looked around the chamber. We created this situation. Now we must live with the consequences. But even as the council debated, the war was spreading. Human fleets had appeared throughout the galaxy. They struck with precision and overwhelming force against any government that had supported anti-human policies. The hegemony worlds had imposed harsh trade restrictions on human colonies. Now their orbital stations were burning. Their patrol fleets were scattered debris. Their industrial centers were dark and silent. The consortium banking systems had frozen human assets and manipulated currency exchange rates to damage human trade. Now their financial networks were completely shut down. Every computer system they owned had been infiltrated and locked by human cyber warfare specialists. The Meridian Republic had voted consistently against human interests in the Council. Now their capital world was surrounded by human warships that had appeared from nowhere. But the humans fought with rules. They targeted military installations and government facilities. They avoided civilian areas. They allowed evacuation ships to leave combat zones safely. They provided medical aid to wounded enemies. This confused the alien governments even more than the advanced technology. Most species fought total wars. When they went to battle, they tried to destroy everything belonging to their enemies. The idea of showing mercy to an opponent was strange to them. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the human fleet surrounding the Meridian capital. Her ship, the Democratic Peace, then hung in space above the planet's largest city. She could have destroyed the entire city with a single weapon, but her orders were clear. Military targets only. The Meridian president contacted her ship directly. He was a being that looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard, with brown fur and scales covering his face. "Human captain," he said. "What are your terms?" "Unconditional surrender of your military forces," Vasquez replied. "Dismantlement of your anti-human trade policies. Full reparations for damages caused to human colonies, and withdrawal from the Galactic Council. And if we refuse?" Vasquez gestured toward her tactical display. It showed the positions of 30 human warships around the planet. Ships that had appeared without warning and taken control of Meridian space in less than an hour. Your military is already destroyed. Your orbital defenses are offline. Your communication networks are under our control. You have no ability to refuse. The president looked at the display and made a sound like a wounded animal. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day you first voted to restrict human shipping rights," Vasquez answered. 17 years, 4 months, 12 days. The president realized that every human diplomat, every human trader, every human visitor to his world had been gathering intelligence for nearly 2 decades. The humans had been preparing for this war longer than most beings lived. Similar conversations were happening throughout the galaxy. World after world, fleet after fleet, the alien governments were learning that resistance was impossible. The humans had spent half a century studying their enemies and preparing for this moment. But the most shocking discovery was still to come. Admiral Marcus, Holt's flagship, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. The ship was massive, larger than most space stations. Its name was painted on the hull in letters that could be seen from orbit. Manifest Destiny. Behind it came the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Thousands of ships of every size and type, battleships that dwarfed Zeltharian dreadnoughts, carriers that launched fighter squadrons by the hundreds, support vessels equipped with weapons that could crack planets. The alien governments watching from Nexus Prime realized that everything they had seen so far was just the beginning. The attacks on Zeltharian bases, the destruction of military fleets, the occupation of hostile worlds, all of that had been done by advanced scout forces. This was humanity's real military. Admiral Holt opened a communication channel to the Galactic Council building. His message was broadcast on every frequency, translated into every language heard by every being in the system. I am Admiral Marcus Holt of the Earth Defense Force. I speak for all of humanity. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. The Galactic Council will be dissolved. All anti-human treaties and agreements will be cancelled. All restrictions on human activity will be removed. He paused and looked directly into the camera. You will accept these terms or you will be destroyed. There will be no negotiation. There will be no compromise. There will be no mercy for those who chose to make war on children. The countdown began. 24 hours for the alien governments to accept the end of their power. 24 hours to decide between surrender and extinction. In the council chamber, Chancellor Vexthul looked around at the faces of his fellow representatives. He saw fear, desperation, and the beginning of acceptance. The age of alien dominance over humanity was over. The age of human dominance over the galaxy was about to begin, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. The surrender ceremony lasted exactly 6 minutes. Chancellor Vexthul stood at the center of the council chamber, but now the chamber looked very different. Human soldiers in powered armor stood at every entrance. Human officers sat at monitoring stations throughout the room. The great symbol of the Galactic Council, a golden sphere representing unity among the stars, had been replaced with a simple blue flag showing Earth rising over a starfield. Admiral Marcus Holt sat in what had once been the Chancellor's chair. He wore a simple military uniform with no decorations except his rank insignia. Behind him stood Sarah Chen, no longer an ambassador but now the Secretary General of something that didn't exist yet, the Galactic Federation. The remaining alien representatives sat in their seats like prisoners waiting for judgment. Most of them stared at the floor. A few looked around nervously. None of them looked at Admiral Holt directly. The Galactic Council is hereby dissolved, Holt said. His voice was calm and steady. All military forces under Council authority are disbanded. All treaties and agreements made by the Council are cancelled. All laws and regulations imposed by the Council are void. He stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. In place of the Council, humanity establishes the Galactic Federation. Membership will be voluntary. Representation will be equal among all species. Enforcement will be provided by the Federation Defense Force under human command. Chancellor Vexthul stepped forward. His forearms held the ceremonial documents of surrender. His hands shook as he signed each page. I hereby surrender all authority of the former Galactic Council to the human government, he said. His voice was barely a whisper. I accept the terms of the Federation Charter without reservation. The other representatives followed. One by one, they signed away the power their species had held for centuries. One by one, they accepted that the galaxy now belonged to humanity. When the last signature was recorded, Admiral Holt made an announcement that shocked everyone in the chamber. Effective immediately, I am retiring from military service. My authority as Fleet Admiral is transferred to the Federation Defense Council. The occupation of alien worlds will end within 30 days. All prisoners of war will be released or transferred to civilian courts. Sarah Chen stepped forward. The Federation's first priority will be the reconstruction of damaged worlds and the establishment of fair trade relationships among all member species. Medical aid, technological assistance, and educational programs will be available to any world that requests them. The aliens in the chamber looked confused. They had expected conquest, slavery, perhaps genocide. Instead, the humans were offering partnership. Representative Kextar of the Vegan Commerce Guild raised one of his blue hands. Secretary General Chen, what assurance do we have that humans will not simply replace the Council as our new masters? Sarah looked at him with tired eyes. She had aged years in the past week. The weight of what humanity had done and what they would do next showed on her face. None, she said honestly. You have no guarantee that we will keep our promises. Just as we had no guarantee that you would keep yours. The difference is that we choose to keep our word. Over the following months, the galaxy learned that humanity meant what they said. The occupation forces withdrew from conquered worlds. The prisoners were released. The blockades were lifted, but more than that, the humans began to share their technology. Medical treatments that could cure diseases thought incurable. Agricultural techniques that could feed billions. Energy systems that were clean and unlimited. Manufacturing processes that could create anything from basic materials. Dr. James Kim led the medical aid mission to the former Zeltharian worlds. He had been developing treatments for red fever and other diseases for decades. Now he could finally use his work to help people. "We're not here as conquerors," he told the Zeltharian doctors who worked with his team. "We're here as colleagues. Your people have medical knowledge that we can learn from. Together we can solve problems that neither of us could handle alone." The response was not immediate. Many alien species remained suspicious of human motives. They waited for the trap, for the moment when humanity would reveal its true intentions. But as months passed, the trap never came. Human teachers shared knowledge freely. Human engineers helped rebuild damaged infrastructure. Human diplomats negotiated trade agreements that benefited everyone involved. The former war leader Krexgoth, now a prisoner awaiting trial for war crimes, was interviewed by a human journalist. "Why?" he asked. "You have the power to rule the galaxy as absolute masters. Why do you choose to share it?" The journalist Maria Santos thought for a moment before answering. "Because power that comes from fear doesn't last," she said. "Real strength comes from making everyone around you stronger too." We learned that the hard way. The transformation of galactic civilization took years, but it was profound. The artificial scarcities that had kept species fighting each other were eliminated. The trade restrictions that had limited economic growth were removed. The military spending that had consumed vast resources was redirected to exploration and research. New worlds were discovered and settled by mixed populations of humans and aliens working together. Scientific expeditions mapped unknown regions of space. Cultural exchange programs allowed species to learn from each other's art, music, and philosophy. The galaxy became more prosperous, more peaceful and more just than it had ever been in recorded history. 5 years after the Six-Day War, Sarah Chen stood in her office overlooking the capital of the Galactic Federation. The building was new, designed by architects from a dozen different species. Through her window she could see ships from every corner of the galaxy coming and going in peaceful trade. On her wall hung a memorial listing the names of the 300,000 humans who had died during the New Eden blockade. Next to it was another memorial for the 50,000 Zeltharian soldiers who had died in the war. Both were carved from the same black stone with the same simple inscription, "They will not be forgotten." Her aide, a young Altarian named Clicking Sound of Rain, entered the office. "Secretary General," she said in her musical voice, "the quarterly economic reports are ready. Trade volume is up 340% from pre-war levels. Medical outcomes have improved across all member worlds. Educational exchange programs are at full capacity." Sarah smiled. "And military incidents? 3 minor disputes resolved through arbitration. No armed conflicts reported anywhere in Federation space." Sarah nodded and turned back to the window. Ships from Earth, from Zeltar, from Altair and Vega, and 100 other worlds were flying together through the same space where war fleets had once prepared for battle. "Ma'am?" Clicking Sound of Rain asked. "Do you think the war was worth it?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the children who had died on New Eden. She thought about the Zeltharian families whose sons and daughters had never come home from the war. She thought about the years of diplomacy that had failed to prevent the violence. "We tried diplomacy for 47 years, she said finally. "Peace took 6 days. The math speaks for itself." She turned away from the window and picked up the next day's schedule. There were trade negotiations to oversee, scientific conferences to attend, cultural festivals to open. The work of building a better galaxy continued. Outside her window, the ships continued their peaceful journeys among the stars. Human vessels and alien vessels, flying together through space that belonged to all of them. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity's patience had limits, but humanity's capacity for building something better than what came before seemed to have no limits at all. The age of fear was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And it all started with 6 days that changed everything.